The jungle breathed. That it was the only way Elias Carter could describe the sound, the slow, rhythmic pulse of wind through the towering black-barked trees, the distant screams of unseen creatures, the hum of life, so thick in the air that it pressed against his skin like a living thing. This planet didn't just host life, it was life, in its most raw and unforgiving form. Elias adjusted the straps of his sample pack, his boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The research outpost was half a kilometer behind him, but already, the jungle had swallowed any sign of it. He was alone. That was when he heard the sound, a low pained growl, so deep it vibrated in his chest. Elias froze. His hand went to the shock stick at his belt, useless against most of the predators here, but better than nothing. Slowly, he turned. There, half buried in the undergrowth, was a Varix. His breath caught. Varix were myths, stories. The Dominion survey teams had only ever caught glimpses, blurs in the canopy, the occasional mangled corpse of something foolish, enough to fight one. They were the apex of an apex world, creatures so deadly that even the planet's most vicious predators fled from them. And this one was dying. Its massive, scaled body was curled in on itself, one of its 4 eyes swollen shut. A deep gash ran along its flank, oozing dark blood. The creature's ribs heaved with labored breaths, its claws as long as Elias's forearm twitching weakly in the dirt. Elias should have run. Instead, he crouched. The Varix's remaining eyes snapped to him. A low warning rumble built in its throat. Easy, Elias murmured, keeping his voice soft. I'm not going to hurt you. The creature snarled, baring fangs that could shred metal. Elias didn't move. He'd spent years studying predators. He knew what fear looked like, even in something this deadly. Slowly, he reached into his pack and pulled out a med scanner. The Varix tensed, muscles coiling, but it didn't strike. Just checking, Elias said, keeping his movements slow. The scanner beeped, and his stomach dropped. Infection, severe blood loss, broken ribs. If he left it, the Varix would be dead by nightfall. Elias exhaled. Then, before he could second-guess himself, he pulled out a trauma kit. The creature watched him, its breath hot and ragged. Elias kept talking, nonsense words, just to fill the silence. He didn't know if it understood him, but the sound seemed to keep the beast still as he worked. Cleaning the wound was the hardest part. The Varix jerked when the antiseptic touched its flesh, a snarl ripping from its throat. Elias flinched but didn't stop. I know, he muttered. Hurts like hell, but you'll die if I don't. The creature's eyes locked onto his for a heartbeat. Elias wondered if he'd just signed his own death warrant. Then, impossibly, the Varix relaxed. Elias finished his work in stunned silence. He injected a slow-release antibiotic, sealed the wound with synflesh, and finally sat back, wiping sweat from his brow. The Varix stared at him. Elias stared back. Then, without warning, the beast moved. Elias tensed, but it only pushed itself upright, its massive body swaying slightly. It took a step, then another, testing its strength. Then it turned its head and looked at him one last time, and vanished into the jungle. Elias sat there for a long moment, his heart pounding. Then slowly, he stood and started the trek back to camp. He didn't tell the others what he'd done. They'd call him a fool. Maybe he was. But that night, as he lay in his bunk, he heard a deep, rumbling growl just beyond the perimeter fence. When he looked out, he saw golden eyes watching him from the darkness. The Varix had not left. It was waiting. The jungle was never silent, but tonight, it felt different. Elias Carter stood just outside the research outpost's perimeter fence, his breath fogging in the cool night air. The golden eyes from the darkness hadn't moved. The Varix, though he knew that was a foolish thought, was still there. Watching, he should have been afraid, but he wasn't. Instead, he held out a piece of raw meat left over from the lab's protein stores. The creature's nostrils flared, but it didn't move. You're welcome, Elias murmured, then placed the meat on a flat rock and stepped back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, like a shadow given life, the Varix moved. 1 second, it was a shape in the dark. The next, it was right in front of him, its massive head lowering to sniff the offering. A low, rumbling sound vibrated from its chest, not a growl, but something deeper, almost like approval. Then it took the meat in a single bite and melted back into the trees. Elias grinned. 3 weeks later, the research team was gone. Not dead, evacuated. After the third attack by the local predators, the Dominion Science Board had ordered a full withdrawal. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. Elias had refused to leave. Now, as he walked through the empty outpost, he wondered if that had been a mistake. The generators hummed softly, the only sound in the abandoned buildings. The others had taken most of the supplies, leaving behind only the bare essentials. And then there was him, the Varix Rook. Elias had started calling him, and his head hadn't left either. Every night, those golden eyes watched from the trees. Every few days, Elias left food, and every time, Rook took it without a sound. They had an understanding. At least. That's what Elias told himself. The first attack, Elias was collecting water samples from a nearby stream when it happened. 1 second, he was kneeling by the water, his scanner beeping softly. The next, a rustle in the bushes made him freeze. Not Rook. Rook didn't rustle. Slowly. Elias turned his head. A pair of glowing green eyes stared back at him from the undergrowth. Then another, and another, razor-jawed stalkers. His blood turned. 2. Ice. The stalkers were pack hunters, fast, vicious, and smart enough to set traps. And right now, they were between him and the outpost. Elias didn't move, didn't breathe. The lead stalker crept forward, its long, serrated fangs glistening. Then a shadow dropped from the trees. Rook hit the ground like a thunderclap, his massive body slamming into the lead stalker before it could react. The sound that ripped from his throat wasn't a growl, it was a war cry, deep enough to shake the earth. The stalkers scattered, but Rook wasn't done. He moved like liquid death, his claws slicing through the nearest stalker before it could flee. The others turned to feed a mistake. Rook tore through them like they were nothing, his movements too fast to follow. Elias could only watch. By the time it was over, the ground was littered with bodies. Rook stood in the middle of them, his chest heaving, dark blood dripping from his claws. Then he turned and looked straight at Elias. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Rook huffed a short, sharp sound and vanished back into the trees. Elias let out a shaky breath. He had just been saved by an apex predator, and somehow, he wasn't leaving. The starship. The sound woke Elias 2 nights later, a deep, metallic groan, like something huge breaking the atmosphere. He stumbled out of his bunk and ran to the outpost's observation deck, his heart pounding. The sky was on fire. A starship, massive, sleek, and gleaming silver, descended through the clouds, its thrusters roaring as it slowed. The trees bent beneath the force of its landing, the ground trembling like an earthquake. Elias's stomach dropped. He knew that ship. Everyone in the galaxy did. The Celestial Dawn, Princess Valeria's personal vessel, and she wasn't here for research. The Princess Valeria of the Galactic Dominion stepped onto the planet's surface like she owned it. Dressed in a silver hunting suit, her dark hair braided tightly behind her, she looked every inch the predator she was known to be. Her entourage followed armed guards, scientists, and, worst of all, her personal pack of cyberhounds, their mechanical eyes scanning the jungle with cold precision. Elias met her at the outpost's gates, forcing himself to stand straight. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly, "this is unexpected." Valeria's smile was sharp. "Dr. Carter, I hear you've been playing with the wildlife." Elias's blood ran cold. She knew. Somehow, she knew. Valeria didn't wait for a response. She turned, surveying the jungle. With a hunter's gaze, "This planet is now a royal game preserve," she announced. "All non-essential personnel will be removed." Elias stiffened. "My research is over." Her eyes flicked to him. "Unless you'd like to stay." As part of the hunt, the threat hung in the air. Elias said nothing. Valeria smirked. Then she turned to her guards. "Find the VFRX," she ordered. "I want it alive." As the guards moved out, fists clenched. Rook was in danger, and he had no way to warn him. The warning that night. Elias left the outpost's gates open. He didn't know if Rook would come. Didn't know if he'd even understand, but he had to try. He sat on the steps, a piece of meat in his hand, and waited. The jungle was silent. Then a shadow moved. Rook stepped into the light, his golden eyes fixed on Elias. There was blood on his claws. Fresh. Elias's throat tightened. "They're coming for you," he whispered. Rook's head tilted, as if listening. Then, without warning, he turned. Dan snarled. Elias followed his gaze. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, one of Valeria's assassins, and he was already raising his weapon. Elias barely had time to react before Rook moved. The assassin didn't even scream. When it was over, Rook dragged the body to Elias's feet and dropped it. Then he made that same rumbling sound, almost like a question. Elias swallowed. "It's starting," he said, and Rook understood. The humid jungle air clung to Elias's skin as he dragged the assassin's body into the bushes. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the realization of what this meant. War had come to his quiet research outpost, and he was hopelessly outmatched. Rook watched him work, golden eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The massive predator's nostrils flared as he sniffed the air, sensing something Elias couldn't. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "They'll send more," Elias whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need 2. A twig snapped nearby. Both man and beast froze. Rook's muscles tensed, ready to spring. Elias held his breath, ears straining against the jungle's nighttime chorus. Then a soft chirping sound. Just a nightbird. Elias exhaled slowly, but Rook remained alert. The VRX knew better than to trust false alarms. "We can't stay here," Elias decided. He grabbed his field pack from the outpost, stuffing it with medical supplies, protein rations, and his portable scanner. The heavy pulse pistol from the dead assassin went into his belt. It felt foreign in his grip. He was a scientist, not a soldier. Rook nudged his arm with a massive head, urging him to move faster. The message was clear. Time was running out. They slipped into the jungle just as the first streaks of dawn painted the sky. Elias followed Rook through paths no human could have found. The Varicus's knowledge of the terrain their only advantage. The deeper they went, the stranger the jungle became. Bioluminescent fungi glowed along their path, almost as if, lighting their way. Elias paused to examine some unusual claw marks on a tree trunk. "These aren't from any species I've catalogued," he murmured. Rook made an impatient sound and kept moving. By midday, they reached a sheltered clearing where a small stream cut through the rocks. Elias knelt to refill his water purifier when Rook suddenly went rigid. Before Elias could react, the predator knocked him flat with a swipe of his tail. The stun bolt meant for Ilias's head sizzled past. Scorching the tree behind them, 3 of Silria's hunters emerged from the foliage, their sleek black armor making them nearly invisible in the shadows. "Don't kill the human," their leader barked. "The princess wants him alive." Rook moved like lightning. His first strike took down the nearest hunter before the man could raise his weapon. The second hunter fired wildly, the blue energy bolts tearing through leaves but missing their mark entirely. Elias scrambled behind a tree, pulse pistol shaking in his hands. He'd never fired at another living being before. Taking a deep breath, he leaned out and squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide, but it made the third hunter duck for cover. That was all the opening Rook needed. With a terrifying roar, he pounced, his claws making short work of the remaining attackers. Silence fell over the jungle again, broken only by Ilias's ragged breathing. He stared at the fallen hunters, his stomach churning. "They tracked us," he whispered. How Rook sniffed at one of the bodies, then growled. He used a claw to flip the dead hunter over, revealing a small implant behind the man's ear. A tracking device. Ilias's blood ran cold. "They're all chipped. Silria can follow every move we make." He looked at Rook with sudden realization. "And she's not just after you anymore. She wants me too." The Varix's golden eyes met his, and in that moment, Elias saw something unexpected. Concern, not just animal instinct, but genuine worry. Rook understood the danger they were in. A new sound cut through the jungle, the distant whine of repulsor engines. Silria's war machines were coming. "We need to move," Elias said, stuffing supplies from the dead hunters into his pack. "And we need to find a way to disable those trackers." Rook made a strange chuffing noise, then turned and began leading Elias deeper into uncharted territory. The path grew steeper, the vegetation thicker. Strange, twisted trees with black bark loomed overhead, their branches forming a nearly solid canopy. As they climbed, Elias noticed something odd. The usual jungle sounds were fading. No bird calls, no insect chirps. Even the wind seemed muted here. It was as if they'd entered some sacred space where normal creatures dared not tread. Rook stopped suddenly at the edge of a cliff. Below them stretched a hidden valley, its floor covered in massive stone structures covered in vines. They looked ancient, far older than any Dominion outpost. "What is this place?" Elias breathed before Rook could respond. A new sound echoed through the valley, the unmistakable roar of a starship's engines. Silria wasn't just sending hunters anymore. She was coming herself. Rook nudged Elias toward a narrow path leading down into the valley. His message was clear. Safety lay below. But as Elias took his first steps toward the mysterious ruins, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than a simple hunt. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath as man and beast descended into the unknown, the princess's wrath following close behind. Somewhere in the distance, a new sound began, a deep, resonant hum that made the very stones vibrate beneath their feet. The planet itself was waking up, and it had been waiting for them. The ancient stones hummed beneath Ilias's fingertips as he followed Rook down the narrow path. The vibration traveled up his arms, making his teeth chatter. It wasn't mechanical, it felt alive, like the valley itself was breathing. Rook moved with purpose, his massive body surprisingly graceful between the towering monoliths. The deeper they went, the stranger the ruins became. Carvings covered every surface, not Dominion script, nor any language Elias recognized. They pulsed faintly with the same blue glow as the jungle's bioluminescent fungi. A shadow passed overhead. Elias ducked instinctively as Silria's dropship screamed across the sky, searchlights cutting through the gathering dusk. "They're here," he whispered. Rook growled, low in his throat, and quickened his pace. The path ended at a circular platform in the center of the ruins. Strange symbols spiraled outward from its center, glowing brighter as they approached. Ilias's scanner beeped frantically. The energy readings. This shouldn't be possible. The device overloaded, its screen cracking. He shoved it back in his pack, just as Rook stepped onto the platform. The moment the Varix's claws touched stone, the carvings flared to life. Blue light raced through the grooves, illuminating the entire valley in an eerie glow. Somewhere in the jungle, unseen creatures shrieked in response. Then the ground shook. Elias grabbed onto a monolith as the platform began sinking. Rook didn't move, standing firm as the stone descended like an ancient elevator. With no better option, Elias jumped on just before the opening, sealed above them. Darkness swallowed them whole. The air grew thick and heavy as they descended. Elias's ears popped, then light, faint at first, then brighter as the platform settled into an enormous underground chamber. His breath caught. The walls were covered in the same carvings, but these showed clear images. Variks, hundreds of them, some fighting, some kneeling before towering figures, others, changing their bodies, twisting into something else entirely. Rook made a sound Elias had never heard before, something between a whine and a growl. The massive predator was trembling. Before Elias could react, a new light appeared at the far end of the chamber. A holographic projection flickered to life, showing a star map unlike any Dominion charts. At its center pulsed a familiar green planet. This is your home. Elias realized that the projection changed, showing Variks fighting against armored figures, not Dominion, something older. The battle raged until only a handful of Variks remained. Then the image shifted again, showing the survivors being altered, their bodies reshaped by glowing machines. Rook snarled at the images, his claws digging grooves in the stone. A voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language Elias shouldn't have understood but did. Guardians, it said. The last defense. The projection zoomed in on one Variks, smaller than the others, with distinctive scars across its flank. Ilias's pulse jumped. That's you. Rook turned to him, golden eyes burning with something more than animal intelligence. Recognition. Memory. The ground shook again, harder this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. Up above, Silria's forces were searching for them. The projection changed once more, showing a new image, a human figure standing beside a Variks. The chamber's lights pulsed. In time with Elias's racing heart. You knew, he whispered. You knew humans would come here. A deep rumble built in Rook's chest as the chamber's far wall began sliding open, revealing a tunnel leading deeper underground. The message was clear, their path forward. But as Elias turned toward it, a deafening explosion rocked the ruins. Above, Silria wasn't waiting anymore. Rook shoved Elias toward the tunnel just as the ceiling cracked. Sunlight and smoke poured through the opening as the princess's war machines broke through. Elias ran, Rook at his heels. Behind them, the ancient chamber groaned in protests as Silria's forces violated its sanctity. The carvings along the tunnel walls glowed brighter as they passed, almost like they were reacting to Rook's presence. The tunnel ended at a sheer cliff overlooking a massive underground lake. No bridge, no path forward. Elias turned just as the first hunter emerged from the tunnel behind them. Then another, and another. Silria stepped through last, her silver armor gleaming in the blue light. Dr. Carter, she called, voice dripping with false sweetness. You've led me to quite the discovery. Rook positioned himself between Elias and the hunters, his spines flaring in warning. The princess smiled. Don't worry, I'm not here to kill you. She raised a device, a control unit. I'm here to take what's mine. She pressed a button. Rook screamed. The sound tore through Elias like a physical blow. The Variks collapsed, his body convulsing as hidden implants activated. Silria laughed as her hunters advanced. Did you think you were the first human he bonded with? She taunted. We've been tracking this specimen for years. The implants were just insurance. Elias dropped to his knees beside Rook, hands hovering over the shuddering predator. The Variks' eyes met his, filled with pain and apology. Then the lake erupted. Tendrils of glowing blue energy lashed out from the water, wrapping around the nearest hunters. They didn't even have time to scream before being dragged under. Smile vanished. What is this? The carvings along the walls blazed with light. The ground shook, and from the depths of the lake, something rose. Elias's blood turned to ice. Another Variks, but larger, older. Its body was covered in the same glowing patterns as the ruins, and when it opened its eyes, they burned with the same blue fire as the carvings. The chamber's voice boomed again. The last defense awakens. Silria's remaining hunters opened fire. Their energy bolts passed straight through the ancient Variks like it wasn't even there. Then it moved. Chaos erupted. Elias grabbed Rook's head, staring into the Variks' pain-glazed eyes. Fight it, he begged. You're stronger than their machines. Somewhere in the carnage, Silria was screaming orders. Her control unit lay abandoned on the ground. Elias lunged for it, fingers closing around the device, just as a hunter's body crashed. Down beside him, the ancient Variks was methodically tearing through Silria's forces, its movements precise despite its size. The princess herself was backing toward the tunnel, her face pale with terror. Elias smashed the control unit against the rocks. Rook gasped as the implants deactivated. The Variks staggered to his feet, shaking off the last of the shocks. His eyes locked onto Sylria. The princess turned to run. Just as the tunnel collapsed behind her, she was trapped. The ancient Variks loomed over her, its glowing eyes unreadable. Silria fell to her knees, her silver armor suddenly looking very small. Elise expected the creature to strike. Instead, it turned to Rook and made a series of deep, rumbling sounds. Rook responded in kind, the two predators communicating in a language beyond human understanding. Then the ancient one did something extraordinary. It bowed to Rook the glowing. Variks turned its gaze to Elias. When it spoke, the words formed directly in his mind. the cycle begins again. Then it was gone, dissolving into blue mist that swirled upward through cracks in the ceiling. The carving's glow faded, the lake stilled. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by Silria's ragged breathing. Rook limped to Elias's side, pressing his massive head against the human's chest. The message was clear. It was over, for now, because as Elias looked down at the carvings beneath his feet, he realized the truth. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a warning, and Silria had just woken something much worse than herself. The blue mist from the ancient Vivorix swirled around Elias's legs as he knelt beside Rook. The massive predator's breathing was labored. His golden eyes dimmed from the implant's torture. Silria's control unit lay in pieces at their feet, its circuits sparking weakly against the stone floor. Across the chamber, Princess Silria had stopped screaming. She crouched near the collapsed tunnel entrance, her silver armor smeared with dirt, her dark eyes wide with something Elias had never expected to see in HFY. "You don't understand what you've done," she whispered. Elias ignored her, his fingers gently probing the wounds where Silria's implants had been buried under Rook's scales. The Varix flinched but didn't pull away. "Hold still," Elias murmured. He dug into his pack for his medkit, fingers closing around a nanosealer. The device wasn't meant for alien biology, but it would have to do. Rook rumbled low in his throat as Elias worked his massive body tense. The wounds were deep. Valeria hadn't just been tracking him. She'd been controlling him. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Elias spun, pulse pistol raised, but it wasn't an attack. The carvings along the walls were splitting, fine lines, spiderwebbing through the ancient stone. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ruins were collapsing. "We need to move," Elias said, shoving his supplies back into his pack. He glanced at Silria, "And we're taking her with us." Rook snarled, his spines flaring. Elias met the Varix's gaze. "She knows things, important things." The predator hesitated, then gave a short, sharp nod. Silria scrambled back as Rook approached. "You can't." Rook's tail lashed out, wrapping around her waist before she could finish. He lifted her effortlessly, ignoring her shrieks, and turned toward the only exit left. The underground lake. Elias's stomach dropped. "We're not swimming through that." Rook made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then he stepped to the water's edge and the surface parted. A path revealed itself. The lake splitting down the middle like something out of an old Earth myth. The water didn't just move aside, it froze, forming smooth, glowing walls on either side of a dry walkway. Silria stopped struggling. Her voice was barely a whisper. "This shouldn't be possible." Elias had no answer. He stepped onto the path, Rook following with the princess in tow. The moment they were all across, the water crashed back together behind them, sealing the ruins and Silria's hunters away forever. The hidden sanctuary, the tunnel beyond the lake, sloped upward, the walls humming with the same blue energy as the ruins. The air smelled different here, cleaner, sharper, alive in a way the jungle above wasn't. Then the passage opened into a cavern, so vast Elias couldn't see the ceiling, and it was full of eggs, dozens of them, each as tall as Elias, arranged in perfect rows along the cavern floor. Their shells were semi-translucent, pulsing with a soft inner light. Shadows moved inside. Rook released Silria, his entire body going rigid. He took a single step forward, then dropped to his knees, his head bowing like a soldier before a king. Elias's breath caught. "Are these VRRX?" Silria finished, her voice hollow. "But that's impossible. The Dominion wiped them out. I made sure of it." Rook's growl shook the cavern. Elias moved closer to the nearest egg, pressing a hand against its warm surface. The shadow inside shifted toward his touch. A memory flashed, the holograms in the ruins, the ancient Varix bowing to Rook, the words, "The cycle begins again." He turned to Silria. "What did you do?" She laughed, the sound jagged. "What did I do? You think this is my fault?" She gestured wildly at the eggs. The Varix weren't just predators, Carter. They were weapons, engineered by a dead civilization to fight something worse. Her eyes flicked to Rook. "And he's not just a survivor, he's the last pure one. The others, the ones the Dominion found. They were corrupted, twisted by whatever they were meant to fight." Ilias's skin prickled. "You're saying Rook is, what, some kind of key?" Silria opened her mouth, then the first egg hatched. The sound was like shattering glass. A crack split the shell from top to bottom, and a tiny, scaled head pushed through. The newborn Vivorix was no bigger than a house cat, its golden eyes blinking against the cavern's light. It looked straight at Rook and squeaked. Rook made a sound Elias had never heard before, something soft, almost like a purr. He nudged the hatchling gently with his snout, and the little creature clambered onto his massive paw. More cracks echoed through the cavern. Another egg hatched, then another. Silria backed away. No, this isn't the first hatchling." Suddenly perked up, its nostrils flaring. Then it hissed, spines flaring at Silria. Rook's head snapped toward her, his lips peeled back from his fangs. Elias stepped between them. "Wait." The Vivorix froze. Elias turned to Silria. "Tell me the truth, all of it now." She swallowed hard. Then a tremor rocked the cavern. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere far above, something heavy landed. Silrea's face went pale. Oh no! The ground shook again. Harder this time. Rook snatched Elias up with his tail, tucking him against his side as the hatchlings scrambled to safety. Silrea wasn't so lucky. She stumbled, falling to her knees as the tremors worsened. Then the cavern wall exploded. Rock and dust flew as something enormous forced its way inside. A shape moved in the debris, a hulking, unnatural thing with too many limbs and eyes that burned black. It wasn't VHRX. It wasn't anything Elias could name. Silrea screamed. The creature's head swiveled toward the sound. Then it smiled, that grotesque stretch of flesh and fangs, and spoke in a voice like grinding bones. Found you. The creature's voice echoed through the cavern like cracking bones. Ilias's pulse hammered in his throat as Rook pushed him behind one of the stone columns, the Varix's massive body shielding him from view. The hatchlings scattered, their tiny claws scrabbling against rock as they hid in the shadows. Silrea wasn't so lucky. She stumbled backward, her silver armor glinting as the black-eyed abomination lumbered toward her, its limbs bent at wrong angles, too many joints clicking with each step. When it smiled again, its mouth split vertically down the middle, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Princess, it rasped. You led us right to them. Ilias's breath caught. Us, there were more. Rook's spines flared, his muscles coiling. He wanted to attack. Ilias could feel the tension in the predator's body, but the hatchlings were still vulnerable. Then Silrea did something unexpected. She reached into her armor and pulled out a small, glowing device. Remember this? She spat, her voice shaking. The creature froze. For the first time, something like fear flickered in those black eyes. Elias didn't understand, but Rook did. The Varix let out a low, warning growl. His golden eyes locked on Sil. Hand. The princess smirked. Then she crushed the device in her fist. A pulse of energy exploded outward. The cavern trembled. The creature shrieked, its body contorting, as if in pain, but it wasn't hurt, it was changing. Its limbs twisted, its flesh rippled, and then it looked like a Vivarix, a corrupted one. Silrea laughed, wild and desperate. See, Carter, this is what they really are. The Dominion didn't just find Vivarix, we found these things wearing their skins. Elias's stomach turned. The holograms in the ruins flashed in his mind, the ancient Vivarix fighting armored figures, not invaders. Imposters. The corrupted VRX snarled, its form flickering between its true shape and the VRX disguise. It lunged at Silrea. Rook moved faster. He hit the creature mid-leap, his claws tearing into its unnatural flesh. Black blood sprayed the cavern walls, sizzling like acid where it landed. The two predators rolled, a tangle of fangs and fury, shaking the ground with their struggle. Elias scrambled to his feet. The hatchlings were still hiding, but the fight was getting too close. He had to do something. His eyes landed on Silrea. She was breathing hard. Her armor cracked, but her gaze was fixed on the battle. Why? Elias demanded. Why hunt Rook if you knew? She bared her teeth. Because he's the only one who can stop them. A roar shook the cavern. Ilias turned just in time to see Rook rip the corrupted Vivarix's head clean off. The body twitched and dissolved into black sludge, but the victory was short-lived. From the tunnel beyond, more shrieks echoed. Claws scraped against stone. They were coming, Rook snarled, shoving Elias toward the back of the cavern. His meaning was clear. Run. Elias grabbed Silrea's arm. We need to go now. She yanked free. There's nowhere to. A hatchling suddenly darted between them, its tiny claws clicking. It stopped, looked up at Elias, and squeaked. Then it turned and bolted into a narrow crevice in the wall. Rook huffed, nudging Elias forward. The message was clear. Follow. Elias didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees and squeezed into the crevice, Silrea cursing behind him. The passage was tight, the rock scraping his arms, but after a few meters, it opened into another chamber, smaller, but filled with the same blue glowing carvings. Hatchling waited, its golden eyes bright. One by one, the others followed, scampering out of hiding to join their sibling. Rook came last, his massive body barely fitting through the gap. Silrea collapsed against the wall, her breath ragged. This won't save us. They'll tear this planet apart to get to him. She pointed at Rook. He's the last true Varix, the only one who can control the others. Elias stared at her. What? She laughed bitterly. The ruins, the eggs. None of this was an accident. This planet is a nest, Carter, and he's their alpha. Rook growled, but didn't deny it. The hatchlings gathered around him, their tiny bodies pressing close. One climbed onto his paw, squeaking up at him. Rook lowered his head, rumbling softly in response. Ilias's chest tightened. They weren't just survivors, they were a family, and Silrea had led the enemy right to them. A deafening crash shook the cavern. Dust rained from the ceiling. The corrupted Vivarix were breaking through. Elias turned to Rook. What do we do? The Vivarix's golden eyes burned with determination. He stepped forward, placing one massive claw against the chamber's central carving symbol. Elias now recognized the same one from the ruins, the same one from the hologram. Guardian. The carvings flared to life, The ground trembled, and deep below them, something awoke. Silria's eyes widened. Oh, no! The walls of the chamber melted, the stone flowing like liquid. The hatchlings chirped excitedly as the rock beneath their feet began to rise a platform, lifting them upward. Toward the surface, toward the jungle, toward home. Rook stood at the front, his spines raised, his gaze fixed upward. The hatch clustered around Elias, their tiny bodies warm against his legs. Silria grabbed his arm. You don't understand. If they get to the surface. Elias pulled free. Then we fight. The platform accelerated. Wind rushed past as they burst through the cavern ceiling, emerging into the jungle's heart. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than starships, their canopies blocking out the sky. But the sky wasn't safe anymore. Black shapes circled above more corrupted Varrics, their forms shifting unnaturally as they scanned the jungle. Rook roared. The sound shook the trees. The hatchlings echoed it, their tiny voices joining his dot, and from the jungle below, answers came. Hundreds of glowing eyes opened in the shadows. The real VRX had been waiting. The battle for their world was about to begin. Epilogue: the corrupted ones never stood a chance. Rook's call had summoned every surviving Varrics on the planet. They poured from the trees, from the rivers, from hidden burrows, deep underground, pure, uncorrupted, and furious. The fight was short, brutal. Elias watched from the roots of a massive tree. The hatchlings protected behind him, as Rook led the final charge. The corrupted Varrics shrieked as true claws tore through their false skins, their black blood poisoning the earth where it fell. By dawn, it was over. The jungle was silent again. Silria was gone, fled during the chaos, her silver armor lost in the foliage. Elias didn't bother looking for her. Rook returned to him, his scales streaked with black blood, his golden eyes weary but triumphant. The hatchlings rushed to him, squeaking and climbing over his massive paws. Elias smiled. Now what? Rook huffed, nudging him toward the trees. The message was clear: home. And, as Elias followed the VRX into the jungle, the hatchlings darting ahead, he realized something. He wasn't just a scientist anymore. He wasn't just a human. He was part of the pack. And this death world, it was his now, too.